Oh yeah, buddy. That last climb, that was a long one. Whew. Wow, that has got to be one of the longest boardwalks I've ever been on. It is 50, 60 yards if it's a foot. And if you've seen the price of lumber in the last 6 years, you'll know that is a very expensive boardwalk. This is all National Park Service. So in my mind, this is our tax dollars well spent. Well, good morning. Oh, what manner of devilry is this? No one said there would be steps. Oh, knee busters. Here we go. Fallen log just to, insult you right off the bat. Better be a waterfall at the bottom of this. There's your waterfall. The Grand Portage played an important role in the early fur trades, but not as important as a number of other spots along the way, such as Fort William and Fond du Lac, which is now where the city of Duluth sits. But it was used. The first recorded usage of the portage was in 1731 from a French trapper whose name I cannot pronounce. But it's also quite likely that men from Duluth's group in 1679, 1682, 85 would have probably used this portage. Radisson Groseilliers came earlier in the 1660s, and it's thought that they did not use this portage but stuck more along the North Shore. The first evidence that there was any kind of a structure built down at the bay is in 1717 by unknown traders of French persuasion, I would imagine. And after the French and Indian War, the portage, the lodges, and any structures that were down at the bay were largely abandoned as this fell under British rule. And they stuck more to Fort William to get into the interior, and the Brule River in what is now Wisconsin, and can't remember the name of the river, goes through Duluth. St. Louis River? They would have been more into that area. But there is evidence, oral tradition, that this portage was used heavily by the natives of this land for thousands of years. Interesting to walk along this now maintained National Park Service trail and just think that you actually are in the footsteps of people using this for trade, commerce, their livelihood for 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years. There we go. Good morning, trekkers. I want to introduce you to Otis the Good Luck Pocket Moose, courtesy of Outpost Motel in Grand Marais, Minnesota. Thank you very much, guys. Otis is going to keep us company on this trip today. It is October 27th, 8:15 a.m. A beautiful Thursday morning. And we are up on the very tip of Minnesota's North Shore at the Grand Portage Trail. This trail is an 8.5-mile historic portage trail that has been used for thousands of years by fur traders and natives alike. Today we're going to do an out and back on this trail. We got started at about 6:20 this morning under starry skies with just a little bit of purple coming out of the east over Lake Superior. Beautiful morning under headlamp. We walked for a couple of miles before it was light enough to take the headlamp off. And finally here we are at the intersection of Old Highway 61, about 4.5 miles in. The map says this should be 3.7 to 3.8. It's a solid 4.5, folks. I'll tell you that. We've got at least 4.8 to go off to Fort Charlotte on the Pigeon River. Should be a very interesting hike. I'm really looking forward to it as we have a beautiful day. It's completely sunny, at least for now, and the temperatures are supposed to get up into the upper 40s and lower 50s, which is absolutely perfect for hiking. Right now, it's a little chilly. It was very frosty this morning. Fingers are still a little cold. It's still probably right around freezing, but not a bad day at all. So we started down here, and we're going to finish right here, just before the Cascades, right on the Pigeon River. This shows it not going there, but it goes right to the right to the river. We are probably right in about here. Hard to really know. If you ever come up here and roam around, and I would highly recommend it. This is Old Highway 61, heading kind of north and east. It comes off of the actual new Highway 61, and it ends up at an old parking lot that used to be where the border crossing was. And it's just kind of interesting. Looks down over the Pigeon River, and there's a little bit of structure still left there that you can kind of root around if you're careful. On the Canadian side, there is a gift shop. And when I was here 2 years ago and went to it, it looked rather closed, but that was also right in the middle of our little COVID pandemic, so don't know if it's open, but it sure looked new. And one of these days it'd be interesting to go and try to find that. In general, you'll notice this trail has been cut a little bit wider than a lot of footpaths, particularly footpaths in this part of the country, and that is because it is used as a portage. If you Google the Grand Portage Challenge, you'll find that every year there is a on your own activity where people will start with their canoes at an inland lake up the Pigeon River. I want to say 10 or 15 miles, but I don't know that. And they'll paddle down to Fort Charlotte, which can be an interesting paddle. And then from there, they will make the portage all the way down to the bay on Lake Superior. That sounds like a heck of an adventure. And if I was a stronger person, I would do it. But that's just a little bit above my weight class. But that, trekkers, is the kind of everyday adventure that we can look for. This trail does see some use. It's a pretty well-worn path. The water that was in those footsteps was likely from Tuesday's rain. Probably means that there were a few people on it this weekend. Being that this is a Thursday, I expect to encounter no one, though I might. If I came out here on a Saturday or Sunday, I may run into someone depending on what time they and I got on and off the trail. Long trails like this, there could be somebody a half mile behind me and I would never know it. Just gorgeous forest to walk through. Yes, all the leaves are off the trees, being late October up here, but this is still a beautiful, calm time to be out in the woods. Let me ask you, trekkers, Grand Portage or Grand Portage? You wouldn't dare ask somebody from Portage, Wisconsin, if they live in Portage, Wisconsin. And it's Stoughton, not Stoughton. And Gotham, not Gotham. If you can pronounce Chequamegon and Oconomowoc without stuttering, you get a combination medal from me. If you can spell them, you get the oak cluster on your medal. Portage. Right around 7 miles, and the woods are beginning to thaw out. The sun has been up for a little over 2 hours now, but it's finally starting to make its way high enough where it gets through the bare canopy, and things are starting to thaw. The mud is becoming quite slippery. But before that, even 15 minutes ago, these woods were still frozen, cold. Not even ready to take my outer layer off yet, which by 7 miles in most hikes, I'm down to a single layer, and I'm certainly not today. Probably in about another half an hour maybe. Keeping the kind of pace that I wanted to keep for this to make sure I could make it without too much trouble. Hanging in there right around a moving pace of about 1.7, 1.8 miles an hour. Taking a couple of breaks, not as many as I should be. I'll have to correct that on the way back. But overall, it's ending up being about 1.6 miles an hour, which is right around where I wanted to hit. And I consider that on these long hikes, just so I know I'm pacing myself and not beating myself into the ground and having to limp the last 4 miles. Well, with certainty, anyway, that could still happen. The iconic trail of Minnesota's North Shore is, of course, the Superior Hiking Trail. The Superior Hiking Trail is notable in its terrain in that it is a relentless series of ups and downs. Climb 100 feet, descend 80 feet, climb 100 feet, descend 50 feet, climb 30 feet, descend 180 feet, and repeat, rinse and repeat. The beginning of this trail, the first 5 miles, was similar to that, and that there were numerous ups and downs, but they were nowhere on the scale that we have with the Superior Hiking Trail some 20 miles to the south. But there were some long climbs, long, slow climbs. The lake shore, I'm going to get this wrong, but the lake shore is somewhere around 830, 850 feet of elevation. And right now we're sitting at about 1,300. We're kind of in a valley. You cannot see it because of all the growth, but there are hills and ridges over there. And there are hills and ridges over there that top out in the mid-14s and mid-15s. So in 7 miles, we've climbed probably around 500 feet, which is not substantial, but most of that elevation gain was in the first 4.5 miles. Well, as you just saw, we've crossed the highest elevation at 1,340 feet. So I was pretty close in my estimate. It's about 11:30, I think. And I'm guessing we have about a mile, maybe less, to get to Fort Charlotte. Probably less. And clouds have started to come in, which was expected. I was hoping they'd be a little bit later and I'd have a good hour of sunshine at Fort Charlotte to kind of dry out and have a nice warm break. And instead of a warm 46 degrees, it's going to be a cloudy and chilly 46 degrees. But we'll make do with that, as we usually do. Oh, been a really nice, peaceful hike. You know, nothing for views. This is kind of a green tunnel. And that's just perfect, though. It's been me, the moths, and the pheasant, with an occasional squirrel and woodpecker, and airplane, and a chainsaw off in the distance, and closer to the lake, Highway 61. But anyway, it's been peaceful and solitary, mostly. All right, we've made it to Fort Charlotte. Look at this, tent pads, fire rings, picnic tables. Oh, this is nice. Well, let's drop our gear and go explore a little bit before we have lunch. We started down here, just entered the parking lot, walked through the parking lot, missed this turn. Instead, we went down here, up along the road to here, crossed, saw this going that way, skipped it. Instead, went out here, got some really cool shots of dawn, back along the Palisades, across the footbridge, through the picnic area, up to here, across the stone bridge, and on the trail, and 10.2 miles later, we're here now. So you'd come from down this way, paddling down the Pigeon River to this spot, and bring your canoe out here. Now, downriver, probably about 2 miles, maybe less, is Partridge Falls, which is a good, I think, 11 foot waterfall. Down this way, just around the corner, are what's known as the Cascades, a series of small drops that are unrunnable. And then beyond that, you have a series of proper waterfalls that there's no way you're getting a boat past. This really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? We're right here. Look at all of this out into the boundary waters. These portages that they would do to come across to get inland into these lakes. As I sit here with all my fancy gear, I guess there's some consolation that lighting the stove, I tried to use this guy who does not want to go, so we had to do it the old-fashioned way with a little bit of spark. And it works. I always carry this with me every time. We walked this 10 miles with a 17.5 pound pack, which is heavy for me, trust me. My legs, they know it's heavy. But when you consider that the traders would walk this with their packages, and they weren't just bringing furs, they were bringing rice and blankets and meat and cookware and tools, beads, and rum. Lots and lots of rum. And they would put it into bundles, these bags that were about this big, and would portion the weight out to about 90 pounds each. No joke. And time is money. So the faster that you can get these goods from Lake Superior back into a canoe to go back upriver, the faster you're going to get paid. And each man was assigned 2 of those 90-pound bundles. And they would make it in one trip. And it's been told that it would take them, over this 9 miles, it would take them 3 to 4 hours. Took me almost 5. They're going 3 miles an hour with 180 pounds. These guys, you know, wouldn't be a bad thing if one of those fur traders kind of ran through here right about now. I've got the Coke, don't have the rum. What a great break spot. Almost exactly an hour. Probably could have stayed a little bit longer if I wanted to, but it is time to get going. Got the legs stretched out, back relaxed a little bit. It's time to get the knees warmed up again here and get moving. Had a little bit of lunch, saw the sights, learned a little history, and now we've got a little over 10 miles to get back. Oh, mentally, I've kind of checked out from this hike already. I mean, been there, now we're on the way back. Nothing new to see. Scare up a few more grouse, but it's also a bad place to be, is lost completely inside your head like that on these longer days. It's okay a little bit, but the tendency then is that your body just goes into autopilot and you start to cruise, and you start to not be aware of the little warning signs that your already tired 11-mile legs are getting pushed to their limits. Have to pay attention, maintain pace, and make sure I'm taking breaks. All along the trail, I'm finding leftover boards. Some most in good condition, some not in such good condition. And they're for these boardwalks. Think about it though, is they didn't bring these in with ATVs. They had to load them into carts and pull those carts into the trail. Now, we did cross a couple of roads, but that's all we did, was cross a couple of roads. Easily 2 miles to the next road crossing, and you got to bring all this stuff in. These are not light. Well, not alone on the trail. Just ran into a couple from Duluth who are packing themselves from Old Highway 61 out to Fort Charlotte for the night, and it was kind of fun. They had on the Duluth packs, canvas packs, filled to the brim. They were probably carrying 50 pounds each, and they were remarking to me about the same thing we talked about how the traders would each be assigned 2 90-pound packs to carry through this, and I mentioned to them that, yeah, and they typically made the trip in 3 to 4 hours. But that was kind of interesting. I honestly, on a Thursday, did not expect to see anyone else out here. So, interesting. And neither did they. They were just like I, watching the, they were watching the, ooh, tricky here. They were watching the footprints and seeing which ones had water in them and which ones didn't. And they could tell there was a set going out this way that did not have it. And they wanted to use the cabin. So they were worried that whoever's footprints theirs were was going out and taking the cabin. And then they'd have to set up a tent, which they didn't want to do. And here we are. The big climb up from the river is done. It It is a little less roly-poly here for a couple of miles before we start the regular roly-poly as we head down towards the Big Lake Superior. Definite little work camp area here. Lots of spare cut boards. Some plywood stacked up. More piles of wood up there. This is timber, so they're using it for the boardwalks. Must have been kind of a staging area for building the boardwalk across the beaver dam. Didn't notice this on the way in. This could just be a pile of rocks, but those are very, very clean cuts. I don't know if there was a structure here at one time. What it might have been. Made it back to this road intersection, and 15 miles, 15.1 miles on the day. It's about probably 4.7 to 5-ish left. It kind of depends. We'll see. Looking at the topo map and trying to figure out the little grid sections, looks like we got about 2,000 meters. So that's 1.25 miles to get back to the Poplar River. Where I stashed a Coke Zero. That sodium and potassium will be quite welcomed by that point. Oh, yeah, and I think, boy, we're going to be pushing daylight, but I think we're going to run out of it right about the time we get to Highway 61 proper. But from there to the end is about 1.5 miles or less. So, yeah, looking pretty good here. Feeling pretty good. Feet, legs, and back are really starting to complain quite a bit. But I have definitely felt a lot worse at 15 miles than I have today. So this is a big win. I haven't felt this good on a hike in a very, very long time. This long of a hike anyway. I can't remember the last time. So I felt this good at 15 miles. That's a really good sign. Take a little stretch break here, get a little bit of water, and push on. And looky what we have down here, other than slippery mud. We have ourselves a gravel road, Old Highway 61. Here we are, back at Poplar Creek. We had just turned off our headlamp right before we got to the spot. And we're probably not going to need a headlamp here for another good 45 minutes, so that's not bad. Might even make Highway 61 before we need a headlamp. It's all right. And stairs. Absolutely, completely forgot about stairs. Ugh. Not a welcome sight. And you can see there used to be quite the extensive bridge over this creek, but one spring several years ago took it out. This morning this was completely frozen over to where I'd have really had to give it a whack with my trekking poles to break through, and there's still a little bit of ice on it. Can hear the traffic on Highway 61. And when your legs are tired and your body's tired, just this little stretch like this can be challenging. You have to pay attention to what you're doing. Could definitely use some real food. I did eat a little bit of something back at the last break, but it just wasn't enough. I'm ready for something a little more substantial, though I don't know what that's going to be because choices are going to be limited by the time I get back down there. Thousands of years, people have used this very trail to get back and forth to sustain their livelihoods. And today we did it purely for fun. Quite the everyday adventure. And bam, just like that, it's too dark to see safely. If this were a bike trail, I'd just keep pushing it on without the light, but it's not, so I won't. Very close though. Very, very close. We did it. We're here. 20.2 miles. Yeah, still a little bit to go to the car yet. Third of a mile. Awesome. What an awesome day. Awesome, awesome day. Fort's over there somewhere. Car's over there somewhere. Hey, trekkers. Good night, and thanks for coming along.